It was just past 2 a.m. when the sound of splashing shattered the quiet. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but what I saw outside my window was no dream. It was my neighbor, Karen, soaking wet, screaming at her drowned phone from the middle of my backyard pool. What followed wasn't just absurd. It turned into one of the strangest legal battles our neighborhood has ever seen. It was 2:03 in the morning when I first heard the splash, not the soft ripple of a branch falling into the water. No. This was something heavy and chaotic, a full-body cannonball kind of splash. Confused, I sat up in bed and strained to listen. Then came the voice, muffled, furious, unmistakably human. I pulled back my curtain and stared, unsure if I was still dreaming. There, flailing in the center of my backyard pool, was my neighbor, Karen Daltrey, mid-50s. Freshly blow-dried hair now plastered across her face. Her phone held in one hand above the water, like she was saving a sacred relic. She shouted something unintelligible and then threw the phone onto the pavement, where it skidded and cracked. I opened the window. "You owe me a new phone," she screamed. Still waist-deep in my pool, I blinked. "Karen, what are you doing in my backyard?" She waded toward the edge, dragging herself out with a wet grunt. Her robe was soaked, clinging to her like a deflated parachute. She looked furious, but beneath the fury, there was something stranger, conviction. "I heard a child crying," she said flatly, water dripping from her eyelashes. "It came from your backyard. There are no children here." I said, stunned, "What child?" She gestured wildly toward the pool. "I didn't know. I thought maybe someone fell in." I had to act. I looked toward the water. A rubber duck float, half deflated, bobbed lazily near the filter. That I asked. It sounded like a child in distress. She insisted. It could have been laughter, which is dangerous, especially near water. "You should know that." I stared at her. "So your response was to climb my locked fence in the middle of the night and dive into my pool?" Karen crossed her arms. I was morally obligated. She walked to where her phone lay, cracked and soaked, cradling it like a fallen soldier. She whispered, "He's gone." Then, louder, "Your pool did this. I hope you're happy." And just like that, she marched out of my yard, leaving behind wet footprints and a trail of chlorine-scented drama. The next morning, I found a notice in my inbox from the HOA. Two. In fact, one requested civil mediation due to a neighborly incident. The other accused me of pool-based aggression. That night, I reviewed the footage. My security cameras had caught everything: the wild dive, the duck, her yelling at no one. And the moment her phone met pavement, I clipped it, saved it, and braced for war. The HOA meeting was held the following Thursday. Karen came in dressed like a widow of justice, black scarf, sunglasses indoors, and a printed timeline of her rescue mission. She told the board she had heard gurgling and emotional distress and had acted heroically in the face of potential child endangerment. When I played the footage, the room fell silent. Karen, clearly uninvited, hurled herself into the pool, flailed, then emerged, screaming at a plastic duck. The board's chairman coughed into his hand to hide a laugh. But Karen didn't back down. She launched a website the next day, justiceforwetphones.com. It featured dramatic music, blurry screenshots, and a mission statement that read like a conspiracy manifesto. She claimed I had turned my pool into a hazardous aquatic zone and began leaving printed flyers on neighbors' mailboxes, warning of reckless water negligence. One afternoon, I came home to find her cousin Randy in my driveway. He handed me a letter from what appeared to be a law office, but was clearly typed on a home printer using Comic Sans. He told me I had been formally notified of Karen's intent to sue. I chuckled. "Good luck," I said, but the lawsuit came anyway. The court date was surreal. Karen showed up in a wetsuit and held up the ruined iPhone like a poisoned apple. She argued that I had failed to secure my yard, misled the community with false childlike sounds, and over-chlorinated the pool to the point of chemical assault. My lawyer didn't say much. He didn't have to. The video played. And that was enough. The judge raised an eyebrow so high I thought it might escape his forehead. He dismissed the case within 15 minutes, ordering Karen to pay my legal fees and issuing a stern warning against further theatrical litigation. Karen stormed out, but she didn't apologize. Instead, she left a broken patio chair in front of my house with a cardboard sign taped to it, "Free to a good home." Unlike my phone, for weeks afterward, she'd occasionally stare at my pool from her window. Sometimes I caught her holding another phone and speaking into it, maybe narrating a follow-up investigation, but she never trespassed again. The neighborhood shifted. People laughed more. They spoke up at meetings. Several neighbors thanked me quietly, saying they'd felt intimidated by Karen for years, but never had proof of her behavior. Now they had footage. Now they had context. What began as a bizarre nighttime intrusion became something more, a reckoning. Not just for Karen, but for a community that had silently enabled her for far too long. As for me, I installed a taller fence, not out of fear, but to draw a line, a real one. Boundaries matter, even in friendly neighborhoods, especially there. The pool has been quiet ever since. Sometimes, when the water's still, I think about the night Karen dove in, robe flying, phone held high, certain she was a hero, and I wonder what she was really diving for. Attention control, maybe even redemption. She never found what she was looking for, but the rest of us found peace and a slightly used patio chair.